newsletters. So this is the North America newsletter that comes out every month. The North American newsletter happens to be one of our really good modes of communication. Comms tells me that it has one of the highest open rates. So when it does get distributed, a lot of people actually pay attention and look at it. So in addition to the newsletter, so there's different regional letters that come from Icann, and they have basically common content that goes out to all the newsletters. But we also work really hard to make sure that our North America one has regional content that makes, that is interesting to the community. And between Joe and myself, we've been trying to create regular content that we put in each newsletter every month. I am interested in, if you think of there's, specific ideas or specific kind of features that we carry throughout the year and then in the newsletter, we're happy to do that, because that'll be one of the focus areas that we'll work. And provide updates on how we're doing in terms of performing against the plan. Are we reaching our targets? Are we not? And publish those performance indicators, how we're doing against the plan. So that's on the overall communication goals we have for it. I think, okay. So then now going into each one of the objectives in the engagement plan. The engagement plan, if you're familiar with the Icann strategic plan, the strategic plan kind of lays out what is it that we kind of envision, right? Like where as Icann, as the ecosystem, where do we want to be? That's the engagement plan. What is our vision for the organization of how we want to achieve our goals? The engagement plan then starts to dig in of what are the ways that are going to get us there, right? So it's more specific, more focused, more action oriented. The first goal in the strategic plan is the security one. And this is the definition exactly as it comes out of the Icann strategic plan, which is focusing on strengthening the security of the domain name system and the DNS server system. To this community, it's I'm sure this is something that I know you guys work on, and it's very clear to you because of your level of activity within Icann. So securing the domain name system looks at upholding the security and stability of the DNS system. And then on the other side, so looking at things like DNS abuse, the root server system. The root server system is evolving, not just from a technical perspective, where several different instances of the root servers are being added, but also the root server governance itself is also evolving. The root server system is still in the shape that it was in about maybe 30 years ago, with the way the root servers were delegated and how different organizations were given identities to look after. But that needs to evolve, and some people in the organization I've heard refer to the governance, the evolving of the governance of the root server system to be the next big thing after the transition of the IANA stewardship from the U.S. government to the multi-stakeholder model. So it is a big deal that is currently in development. So it's something to pay attention to and do as a strategic goal, but also to focus on locally. So the engagement plan takes that strategic goal, the engagement area, and looks at things that we want to do in the plan to focus on that strategic goal. So as you can imagine, there's a big area for us here with engagement to utilizing the Office of the CTO. And that's where people like David Huberman that I talked about at the beginning is very essential for us. So together with the Office of the CTO, we work on finding partnerships that make sense for us, to put on events, to focus on technical work that the Office of the CTO wants us to focus on, and go out and inform the community that's happening and try to gain interest and participation in that work. For example, the ITHI, the Internet Technical Health Indicators, is an example. The more there are participants in ITHI, the better it is in terms of the data that it produces. So one of the goals that we have with the Office of the CTO is to put on perhaps more events about ITHI, answer questions, reach out to specific large ISP or connectivity providers and talk to them about ITHI and try to enroll them into the project, etc. So that's in the engagement area. And then in the outcomes, as we engage, we're looking to track outcomes there. So is there participation? Are people engaging in ITHI, for example, or in the DAR system? Have we provided enough information about I mentioned the evolution of the root server system? Have we provided enough information about what's happening there? And are people engaging to learn more about what's happening there? So these are the target outcomes that we are trying to track by having these engagement areas. So that's the security one. In terms of dates, in terms of events or engagements that we've tried to deliver against that goal, these are the events that we've captured out of our tracking system. And I'm listing these here not to discuss specifically, but to give you an example of what we're doing here. So for example, we captured 6 events against that goal involving about 234 people. And they include things like university lectures, GSE and Octo putting an event together to deliver. These events also involve us designing a webinar. And I know many of you were involved in the Root Zone from A to Z webinar, which was a really useful and very helpful one. I think I've heard a lot of good input from that on the community. And it wasn't really even very, it was very much an informational one, about how do we go from delegating things in the root zone to actually serving them onto a root server system, and who are the root server operators and what are their concerns with serving the root zone, etc. So that's on the security one. Then jumping to the next one, the next strategic objective in the Icann strategic plan was the Icann's governance. So this one is looking at, of course, strengthening the Icann governance model, the multi-stakeholder model, and then the participation within that model. So people like, sorry, Mary, but I'm going to pick on you. You're somebody who participated in Icann 72, the next Jenner. So now what's next? I mean, it's really great to see you here in the Narao call. And as soon as I saw you were here, I wrote down your name to see, how can we get you involved? How can we make you part of the multi-stakeholder model? And that's exactly what these events are going after. So sorry, Eduardo, already have her. So that's in the Icann's governance. In terms of engagement area, so we're looking at, we want to target doing outreach to stakeholders to increase participation. A very important area of participation is PDP, policy development working groups. Because that's basically where it's really important to have as much participation as possible. Then also strengthening existing partnerships and then expanding to new ones. So, if we're all a very, very major goal that's impressed upon us as staff is, yes, we need to continue to engage with existing people that are involved within Icann, but important for us to reach the people that we reach out to new people, and we need to be able to reach out beyond our existing, that more people know about what Icann is and the role of Icann in the ecosystem, etc. So in terms of outcomes here, we're looking at what do we produce in terms of content, whether it's online or it's written content that we distribute, how we are working with functions like the Office of the CTO, the government engagement team on the materials that they produce. Keep in mind that the Office of the CTO and government engagement also produce their own publications. Octo does more of a research-focused publications, and then GE does more study papers on a certain topic, governance topic, or certain country specific topics. So we need to make sure that people are aware that these materials do come out on a periodic basis and share them. And so that pretty much and then we continue to talk about here in the targets is to identify and partner with other organizations as well. So that's in the governance. In terms of the things that we've done up to date on this, we've said we've developed and released the engagement plan. And again, we did several events where we partnered with universities or we partnered with other Icann functions to deliver events. And then keep in mind, please, as you look at this, is that some of these events, they're not necessarily ours. So we're not putting them together as GSE staff, but we're invited to help with them. So we're either coordinating attendance, we're helping publicizing them, or we are coordinating speakers from, let's say, from the Office of the CTO or from government engagement to come in and lecture or to provide information. So we're not always the organizer, so we don't always have control over how the event goes, but we're involved in organizing for sure. So third objective in the Icann strategic plan is the unique identifier system. So the evolving of the unique identifier systems. A very easy one to point out too here is the introduction of new generic top-level domains, the continued adoption of IPv6, the universal acceptance is also something that's pointed out here in unique identifier systems. And we'll talk at the end about what Narello and us are doing in terms of universal acceptance. So universal acceptance here looks at the ability of email systems, web system, content development systems to be able to use these generic, the top-level domains, regardless of what script they're expressed in. So whether they're in Arabic, which goes right to left, or Cyrillic, or Chinese, or ASCII-based, English, German, Spanish, etc. That those labels are used and accepted by these different systems as any other top-level domain. What we've seen over the years is some developers may have hard-coded a static list of top-level domains, thinking that the list isn't dynamic, whereas we know that the list changes. Some new top-level domains are added, some are retired, etc. The length of the top-level domain also has an impact on how acceptable it is. So some legacy systems might look at only top-level domains are comprised of 3-letter domains like .com or info, whereas we know with the introduction of new top-level domains, the length has gone significantly higher. So all these assumptions that perhaps existed in legacy systems need to be addressed. So that's what universal acceptance is focusing on. And that contributes. We want to work with organizations like the regional internet registries, for example, on promoting IPv6. Joe here from my team and Erin have done several of those where they've talked about internet, where they work as Erin and Icann on promoting IPv6, for example. Supporting community participation in PDPs, that's important, especially as the CTNSO and the GNSO both work on the next the rules for the next round of TLDs and the rules for the internationalized top-level domains. Those are really important things to participate in. Again, partnering with Octo is a very essential thing for us to do here, and we work with them on a regular basis on these, on this type of, on this goal specifically. And in terms of outcomes here, what we look at is level of participation in the different UA, Universal Acceptance courses that we discuss and offer, level of participation in the PDPs in developing the rules for the next round of GTLDs, and then in general, just the ability to promote awareness and about new ideas and new technologies that really need adoption and need understanding in order for it to be adopted. Events here again against this one, these are the events that we captured. Again, as you see, events that are partnership between Icann staff and different Icann staff departments with other organizations, as well as webinars to discuss specifically the unique identifier system. And then finally, the strategic objective. This is the fourth one in the strategic plan, which is the geopolitical issues. So this strategic goal from the Icann strategic plan looks at addressing geopolitical issues in impacting Icann's mission to ensure single and global interoperable internet. So there's many different facets to this goal. Several things that are going on that we all need to pay attention to. One such topic is the evolving legislative and regulatory developments when it comes to internet and data privacy, etc. So that's something to keep an eye on here. And then to continue to build alliances in the internet ecosystem to raise awareness about global stakeholders and Icann's mission and policy making in order to keep this multi-stakeholder process in order to keep this as governed by the multi-stakeholder process. In terms of engagement areas for us and target outcomes, again, it's and you saw a lot of this talked about in the Icann 72, which is sharing information, raising awareness about Icann's role, sharing information about different legislation that is being discussed and the possible impact of it on the internet and how things work on the internet. Sharing within Icann, we have what we call the legislative tracker. So when different members of our team know about these different legislations that are come, we all track it in this legislative tracker, and it's our trigger to have it reviewed properly by somebody who understands it, in order for us to have enough understanding of the potential impact that it has, so that we can share proper information about it. So that's kind of also in our target as well with this one, is to collaborate with the government engagement team on these issues and to provide the proper briefings when appropriate. In our case, of course, here being in North America, we need to keep an eye both on what's happening in the United States government and the Canadian government on this, and that's who we engage with on this goal. And then we also do compile communications and materials following each meeting, and we share it with these government contacts. So after, again, 72, for example, there'll be a communication that gets sent out from Icann GSE staff here in North America to government contacts in North America, the Canadian government and US government contacts, to basically discuss what happened in the meeting and keep them informed. And that's what's captured here in terms of the types of events that we do here against this goal. And I think, so that's it. So if you notice, I talked to you about four goals that are lifted directly out of the Icann strategic plan, and then how they're implemented or how engagement activities are planned against them in the North America engagement plan. There is a fifth goal in the Icann strategic plan, and that's the financial. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember how they specifically word it, but that one is basically concerned with how finances are managed and how they're done in a responsible way and with it keeping within the model. And that isn't something that we felt is something that we can directly contribute to here in the engagement plan. That's why it's not mentioned. But those are the five goals that are specific that are from the Icann engagement strategic plan. So in terms of reporting on progress, what we want to make sure that we do is that we periodically gather that data of how we're doing against the plans, and that we publish it, whether it's on the website or however we decide to, that we publish to the community how we're doing against the plan. And that each year we need to keep revisiting the plan, even though it covers 2021 to 2025, we need to visit it and update it and refresh it with any new information that becomes any new additional goals or updated goals that are added to the Icann strategic plan, which this follows closely to. So before I go into the Q&A, Eduardo, you asked me to speak about what we're doing in terms of one of the projects that we're working with Narelo on. So we've been working for, I feel like almost 2 months now, with Eduardo and Glenn on a project to bring universal acceptance training to the North America region. So between us and the GSE staff here, Joe and myself, and then the Narelo, and then the Universal Acceptance Steering Group, we're working on a training course to offer to the North American region about these universal acceptance issues specifically. So we want to make it, we kind of are starting with a very kind of an overall general idea of just to talk about what are these universal acceptance issues, why is there even an issue with accepting new TLDs that are delegated in the root zone, and then dig in a little deeper and work with even on a more technical level with email implementers and Java developers, etc., on how to address issues in their system to make the universal acceptance to overcome universal acceptance issues. So what I talked about earlier in terms of assumptions on, that the root zone, that the list of TLDs in the root zone might be a static list, assumptions on the length of the TLDs, assumptions on how an email system should handle an email address that has a right to left email address if it's in Arabic or Hebrew versus a left to right email address, that's, let's say, in Spanish, but also has some of the, like an NE in it or something that has a diacritic. So those are the things that we'll be going into in terms of that training. So it's a 4-lecture course over 4 weeks. I think we settled on Thursday, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry. We can share the dates. I'll put the dates here as soon as I'm able to get to the chat. When I'm not sharing, I'll share the dates for the course and where to find information. But that's essentially what we're partnering with Narelo on. It's a fairly large effort. We're starting it in January. We've been planning for it for about 2 weeks. 2 months already. There'll be announcements going out soon to invite people to register. But it's one of the bigger efforts that we've done with Narelo so far, and I think it's going really well. I think we know that it has done by other regions already. Like Ralo has done it, and I believe the Asia Pacific region have done it, and they've had really good success with it. So we're hoping for the same.
Thank you, Naila.
So with that, Eduardo, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was going to say questions and answers, This is the chance for the membership to ask any questions to Naela, even though if they are not part of the plan, Naela with us here. So, while somebody has a question, comes up with a question, I have one. I want to say something about the universal acceptance. I want to add to what you said that even though we send this information of inviting people from the region, we send this information throughout the North American, through the NARALO lists. If you know somebody in your ALS, if you know somebody in your community that works in systems, that works in companies that has to do with servers and that works with emails and they're technical oriented, please invite them to participate in this. This is not only open to the Icann membership. This is open to anyone interested in universal acceptance and understanding what it needs to be done on a technical level, on the technical part of the training, or what to do in your mailing system so you can start accepting these new domain names. I just wanted to add that. And also, I just want to reiterate, I know you said it, Naela. People get confused with these plans because you have an FY'21, FY'22, FY'23, blah, blah, blah. This is a plan from FY'21 to FY'25, 25th. So it's a 5-year strategic plan. And you mentioned it at the end that we did now, the FY'22 is a revision to the FY'21 to the FY'25, 25th plan. So, and people get confused because they think there is a plan every year, and it's the same plan revised. I just wanted to make sure people understand that. There's Alfredo. So, do you want to manage the Q&A, Naela, please? It's easy for you.
Sure. Yeah, happy to. Go ahead, Alfredo. I see you. I think you were first.
Yes, so this is Alfredo for the record. My question, Naila, is regarding the UA training. I see that there are 4 sessions, and there's sort of a footnote that says that there will be a certificate for those that take the technical session. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah. Yeah, so the UASG, which is the Universal Acceptance Steering Group, is the one that will be issuing those certificates. And the reason why, so they're doing that because they've done it in previous trainings as well. The reason why we're doing it is it really goes very deep at in the second half of the training. We actually are bringing, so I don't know if you're familiar with some of the people that will do the training, but Champika is one who's our team member from the Asia Pacific region. I can't recall who the other gentleman is who will be doing the other technical training, but they go very deep into talking about how to do how to make changes to your systems, how to talk, they go into Java. So if people aren't familiar with Java, they will get lost in that training. So we give them that certificate as kind of a recognition that they've gone through the training. Basically, that's why that's what that certificate is about.
If I may, as a follow-up question, Naila, does that imply that there's going to be some kind of practical lab in that particular part of the training?
That's a really great question. One of the things that our planning team has asked already for when we were planning is we talked to the Okta team about setting up some of these virtual labs. I know the Okta team has set up virtual labs for other things, and they've been very popular. So as far as I know, there isn't a lab for tinkering with this, or at least something that lives beyond the training. But that is something that we've already asked for, and I think would be very helpful going forward for those people that get the training.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's a really great question. Yeah. Marita, I think you were next.
Hi, it's Marita speaking. Yes, I think I was next. This is a little out there, Diana. I don't know. I'm dragging something out of my memory from before the pandemic, which feels like 100 years ago now. and, and I was at a conference and I met someone who was an ICANN staff person posted in Montreal. And I wonder whether or not that still exists and whether there's anything that, thank you for your great description of your plan, but does this person fit into your plan at all? If that person still exists?
Was it, so someone in Montreal, was it Adiel by any chance? Was it Adiel? Gosh, now I feel like I have to put a picture of him so you can tell me yes or no.
Oh, I can't remember the name.
This is Joe. Adiel is the only one in Montreal, and I can't stop.
That would be it then.
Yeah, so Adiel, Marita, to connect, if it is Adiel, I have to assume it is probably Adiel. So Adiel is, thank you for the picture, Heidi. Adiel is David Huberman's boss. So David Huberman is assigned to us to do technical engagement within the with the office of the CTO, and Adiel is the head of that technical engagement team. So yes, Adiel very much fits in the picture. In fact, it was Adiel who attended the space session and talked to me about certain things that were discussed during the space session during Icann 72. So we are very much involved with Adiel and his team. And the building the technical engagement team is something that Adiel has been working on for several years now. So to give you an idea, there's David Huberman on his team. He looks after North America, and I believe he also looks after parts of the European region. Then there's there's one more person in the Africa region. Guys, help me out, my colleagues. I can't think of names, but that's what they have. They have a system basically where they loan out team members to different regions, and David happens to be our team member.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks for that, Nyala. I'm always a little confused about it, and I didn't realize that there was an ICANN staff person actually in Canada, because sometimes we feel like we're kind of off the end of somewhere. And yeah, so thank you.
No, I'm glad. Marita, whatever we can do more in Canada, believe me, first of all, I think it's a place that many of our staff members love to go. We all enjoyed the last meeting that we had before the pandemic. And you're right, it seemed like forever ago. But if there's ever ideas or things that you want us to look at, please, by all means. David.
Hi, David Mackey for the record. Thank you very much for the presentation. Wonderful. It's always nice that, and I'd like to again thank Eduardo for bringing in different people from around ICANN to help us in the Narello monthly meeting. The question I have, and I'll warn you, there probably is no answer, but I'm curious about your thoughts on it. The question I have is, as Narello, this particular group that you're speaking in front of are responsible for end users in North America. Now, end users, for the most part, don't have much awareness, if any awareness, of how the internet works, let alone the specialized knowledge that you need to participate properly within ICANN. I'm just curious, have you thought, with respect to the end user, and it's North America in this particular case, but it can apply to end users around the world in terms of that stakeholder group. How do you engage, or do you engage? What kind of limitations do you think, knowing that there really is an impossible way to answer my question? Thanks for trying.
Yeah, no, thanks for the impossible question. So, David, what I'm going to say here on this one, you're right, it's a tough one. I think where we have a hard time in ICANN in terms of, what to engage and at what level, keeping in mind the role of ICANN as a very technical organization and a fairly narrow remit at that. So, if you look at the ICANN bylaws, we're responsible for a very specific function when it comes to the DNS and the coordination role. So trying to engage too much, in trying to engage, we have to keep in mind, that we need to stay focused on the remit. So that's one thing. But in terms of end users, what I have to tell you, in the last year and a half, I have been surprised with the level of engagement that has been happening at educational institutions, universities. I think there has been a lot more interest in that, and I think part of it is the realization that if we don't start early, we lose people. I mean, it's too late to try to engage with them later on. So I don't know if that helps, but there's been more engagement at the beginning in like at universities and academic settings. There have been more calls for us to produce to focus on these ICANN Learn courses and talk about, for example, I think one of the inputs that we got when we were doing the development, the development of the engagement plan, and it was specifically from this audience in Naralo. And they said, don't just talk about spreading out root server instances, talk about why would I want a root server? What does it do for me? What is a root server to start with? So produce more materials on that. So I can see that is certainly within the ICANN remit, and that is something that we could do more on. But I think, David, I will go back to, it's a struggle between sticking to the remit and then but still not alienating you, as you said, end users.
No, thank you. That actually makes, you actually helped me in the sense that if you tier the engagement, one to be some sort of self-service education for basic information. And then I like what you said about targeting universities. And if you tier the engagement at those two levels, actually that probably is the right way to go. So thank you for answering my unanswerable questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Glenn.
I'm like Heidi, I had to click the unmute. Thank you. Two things. One is since you brought up the training and you love Montreal, perhaps we can do the same kind of universal acceptance in French. Perhaps we can work with ISOC Quebec folks and other folks and look at reaching more of our francophone speakers in Canada. So they were responsible for a French track of our North American school back in 2018. So perhaps we can work with you on that. But I do want to shout out, Herb has joined us, and I'm not sure he joined us late or because of the time zone difference, but how does Herb's work with you in term, and I guess you can ask Herb to speak as well. So there must be a role that Herb has with regards to what you're doing as well.
Oh, that's really great question. Herb, if you're on the call and you'd like to talk, I am happy for you to comment on that. I've worked with Herb in previous roles in ICANN on very specific things that came to his attention that needed input. But Herb, you and I haven't really interacted with much in this role. So, but I know that there are times when I would need to call on Herb. So if you wanted to go ahead and comment on that, Herb, what a great question, Glenn. I never thought about that.
No,
so go ahead, Herb, if you're able to speak, please go ahead.
Hi, folks. Yes, I am late. I just came in when I realized that the meeting started at 3 o'clock my time and not 4 o'clock my time. So, Nell, I'm sorry, I don't even know what you're talking about. I just got Q&A. So maybe, Glenn, maybe if you have a specific question, I would be more than happy to answer it. I apologize. I really got caught off guard. So what are we talking about?
Go ahead, Glenn.
Herb, you got me. Okay, so basically, I think a lot of people don't realize the role of the ombudsman. So your function, your role, is an important role. And I think explaining to people, a lot of organizations don't realize the unique and valuable service you provide to the community. So, in order to facilitate what the team is trying to do, there's going to be probably sometimes where there's going to be people have differences of opinion. So I guess what I'm saying, this session was about engagement and the North American strategy. So I guess what I'm calling out to you, Herb, and I know we're limited in time, what function, what role do you serve in terms of the community?
Okay, well, as far as the community goes, who I serve trickles right down to the end user. So anybody that is involved with Icann in any way at all, except to a very limited extent, anybody that's in a contractual relationship with them. So, it may not be jurisdictional if somebody has a problem with Icann, but I can definitely find them the problem. So primarily, it's anybody that's treated unfairly by Icann board, or any of the leadership teams in the community and stuff like that. So if how it pertains to what we were just talking about, I'm not quite sure, because I'm not sure yet what we were talking about. But if it's about stakeholder engagement, I think probably my biggest role is making any new people that show up in the community feel safe, so that they can have the comfort of coming into the community, coming in to work with Icann, the stakeholder groups, constituencies, interactions with the board, knowing that it's a safe, secure environment, that they're not going to be harassed, they're not going to be treated unfairly, they're not going to be discriminated against. So when it comes to any of those issues, making inclusion, diversity, equity, belonging, those are the things that I try to promote, and that I will fight for people if any of those issues are trampled on by anybody in the community, from colleagues right up to the top board level, or right to the CEO as far as org goes. So when it comes to engagement and getting the community involved, I'm there for them, and I'm there to help them feel comfortable, and to protect them if they are in any way at all treated unfairly by anybody in the ecosystem, in the multi-stakeholder community. Does that kind of answer your question? I apologize, my hair looks terrible, but I have hat head today. It's starting to get cold in Canada.
This is Eduardo. I am aware that we are run out of time.
Yes.
I think Glenn, do you want to wrap it up, or shall we close the meeting?
Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes of your time.
No, the information that you're providing is exceptionally very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? I'd like to. I know next meeting you'll be there on time, right?
I'll check the calendar and see what date it is and what time it is. But I know the GNSO council meeting is at 1:00 in the morning my time this month. So, but I can try.
Okay, thank you. It's been a great session. Thank you so much, Naya and Joe, for your contributions today, and we look forward to working closely with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and
Thank you so much
repeat
for
that.
inviting. Thank you.
So we ran out of time. Thank you for being here today, and see you in 1 month. Bye bye. This meeting.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye all.
Bye.